and welcome to United Church Online. We're so glad that you decided to join us today.
If you're new to United Church, we would love to be in touch with you. So why not fill in our Connect card on the link in the description or visit our website for more info.
So let's ready our Bibles, notebooks, and pens as we prepare to receive the word together.
As we speak about this, as we go into the second week, we've got a couple of minutes, and here's the thing. We are working towards God's intended design. So the title of my message is God's intended design. And the reason for this is because if we don't understand what God intended, it'll be easier for us to go off our own path and redefine family for ourselves. Right? We'll redefine, this is what I want, this is what I want it to look like, and we go to radio and Twitter and Facebook and X and Instagram and wherever, and we look at all the other people and say, I want a bit of that, I want a bit of that, I like how that couple does it, I like how those people do it, and we build a weird mishmash kind of theology for family that is so far from what God wanted us to build. And so it's so good for you and I to understand, what did God desire when He set up this thing called family? Regardless of your role, whether you have a family of your own or whether you are part of a family within a home, what did God design and what did He expect from us? It's important for us to do this. So when we go back to Genesis chapter 2, in the beginning, and God said, it is not good for man to live alone. I will make a suitable companion for him. God designed for you and I to be within community, for you and I to be within family. It's not good to be isolated. It's not good for us to be by ourselves. And so God designed a companion, not a slave, not a servant. Right? I know many cultures come from a place where like, yeah, my wife is just there to serve me while I accomplish my dreams. No, a suitable companion. We're doing this together. We serve each other mutually. And then later on it goes on and it says, this explains why a man leaves his father and mother and joins to his wife, and the two are united into one. Now the man and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. Listen, there's a whole sermon in just that verse, right? The three things to emphasize. Firstly, they were united as one. Contrary to our culture that is so individualistic, when we get married, when we start a family, or when we become a family, we share together. It becomes us, not you and me. It becomes us, right? And so what we have is ours. We are together as one. What we have is ours. What we share is ours. I've listened to radio often, and people call in and they're like, when they speak about relationships and marriage and whatever, and it's like, no, what's his is his, what's mine is mine. We simply just live together. I'm like, that sounds great, but that's not conducive to a healthy family. And that's not what marriage was designed to be. It's not just two individuals kind of just being glorified roommates. No, we're sharing our lives together. That's what this is. We're building a life together. And it goes on, it says they were both naked, right? Not just for the sake of nudity. Listen, when your kids move out, do what you want to do. That's on you. But Siobhan is excited. It's like, yes, thank you, Jesus. But also, that speaks about complete openness, right? There was complete openness. There was complete vulnerability. There was complete transparency. It's not just the fact that, we simply just want to fulfill our sexual needs and that's it. No, there's complete vulnerability between the two. And it says they were both naked and they felt no shame. Right? There's no hidden secrets between this part. Again, I'm so fascinated by how culture chooses to do marriage, that my spouse is just the person that I live with, but really I've got someone else that I bear my heart with, share my secrets with, open up to. My spouse is just the person I live with. There's just mutual benefit in finances and we go on holiday together. But this is where I bear my heart. No, this is the person to whom I bear my heart. There is no shame here, right? No secrets, no walls are put up. There is emotional trust. That is what family is meant to be. But obviously, when you read Genesis chapter 3, you see what we were robbed of. You see the fall of humanity and you see this downhill spiral of family. I mean, just have a look at this. This is just Genesis. Let's not even get to the other books of the Bible, just Genesis. Genesis chapter 4, Adam and Eve have two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel already. How's that for family drama, right? Like one chapter later, dead, Like jump forward a little bit, Abraham has a baby by his concubine. Like the wife tells him, listen, we can't have kids, you sleep with the servant falls pregnant, the wife gets upset, Abraham then kicks the servant out with the child, with a loaf of bread and a bottle of wine. How's that for, the great Abraham, It's like, Those are the things you don't include in the family history. When you tell we come from a great line of, except for that one, a great line of, Abraham moves, he leaves with his wife, they come to a town, the locals come and introduce themselves, and Abraham is like, this isn't my wife, this is my sister. How's that for bravery as a husband, This is my sister. I'm sure Sarah was like, It's crazy. The king then takes her, and she lives in the palace, because in that culture, the king could take whatever. And then God brings judgment upon the king. The king goes to him and like, bro, you said she was your sister. Did I say sister? I meant my. The king gets upset. He's like, I would have died. He takes her. He's like, take your wife and go, please, before anything happens. How's Jacob, right? Jacob steals his brother's birthright. You thought you had sibling rivalry. He steals his brother's birthright. He steals his brother's blessing. Right? When his father goes blind, he pretends to be his brother. He covers himself in animal fur because his brother was the hairy one. He steals his brother's birthright. His brother then goes chasing him. He runs away. Years later, he finds a wife. He finally wants to marry her. He arranges with the uncle. The uncle says, fine, you can take my daughter, but then you need to work for 7 years. He works for 7 years. The uncle tricks him, gives him the wrong sister. I don't know if there was alcohol involved. How do you marry the wrong sister? Anyways, he then the next morning wakes up, realizes he was with the wrong sister, goes back to the uncle. The uncle is like, askies. You can have the other one, but you need to work another 7 years. Listen, imagine this uncle at your lobola negotiation. Right? I'm going to have my uncles there. The uncle's like, yeah, no, I've got something up my sleeve. How's Joseph, right? The favorite brother. His brothers kidnap him, plan to kill him. 2 or 3 of the brothers decide, no, listen, that's a bit much. Let's just sell him into slavery. Right? I don't know what's worse. I would have listen, rather kill me. Sells them into slavery and then lie to the father and say, listen, he died. Here's his coat. They rubbed some animal blood on it. Here's his coat. We found this. You thought your family had drama. Just read Genesis. Don't even go to Exodus and Moses and his siblings trying to overthrow him, thinking, who's this guy that thinks he's God's favorite, Just Genesis, and suddenly you'll feel good about your family. You're like, you know what? You guys are great. You guys are good. You know what? Let's go to Spur after church. You guys you're not too bad. Ladies, just look at your husband and be like, you actually all right. Listen, don't do that right now. Do that after the service. Family can get messy. That's the reality that I'm trying to paint. Family can get messy, yet family is still God's ordained vehicle as the pillar of society. As messy as it can get. Listen, why did God not change his mind? Why didn't he be like, you know what, never mind. Scrap that idea. These people are messed up. Let's just start another thing. Let's make it a non-profit organization that's going to change the world. No. God still chooses family. As messy as we are, as dramatic as we are, as selfish as we may be sometimes, God still chooses family. Why? Because family was God's chosen vehicle. Family was God's design. He didn't make a mistake. When the fall happened, he wasn't like, oh, shucks, oh no, let's choose another avenue. Family is the closest structure that you and I have for God to display his character. Think about it. It is within family that we get to see what God is like. Because it's in family that we get to see things like unconditional love. Where else will you find a place like this? At your workplace? No, there's unconditional love until you stop performing. Right? Until you stop meeting targets. No matter whether the company policy is like, we're all family until... Right? Until bonus season comes, then you see, there's not so much family here. Right? Unconditional love is God's mandate. We see that within family. No matter what I've done, no matter where I've gone, no matter how bad I may seem, this is the place where I'm unconditionally loved. Even if I'm the problem child or the black sheep, I'm still unconditionally loved to a degree. Right? There's forgiveness. Family is the place where we forgive over and over and over again. No matter where I've been and what I've done, family is the one place where I experience continuous forgiveness. I experience continuous commitment. Family is the place where we commit to one another. right? God shows us his relentless commitment and then expects us to display that to family. Listen, I've been committed to a lot of things, but there's two things that I'm really grateful for. The two things I'm most committed to: God and his church and my wife. Listen, my commitment comes in waves, right? I've started many hobbies. Today it's golf, next thing it's cycling, then it's this, and I'm like, man, this is my new thing. 3 weeks later, my new thing is done. I'm grateful that the two things I've committed to is God and his church and my wife. Those are the two things that, like, God is like, hey, this is what commitment looks like. Within families, we get to see what grace and mercy looks like, right? Grace, just the covering for our mistakes, that when we get it wrong, there is grace. When we say the wrong things, there is grace. We are merciful towards one another. We don't hold things up against the wall for all eternity, you know? You know those moments where you have an argument and you're like, I hope she doesn't bring, and then she brings up the thing. Back in 1975, when you said, man, it's been 30 years, can we just, no, there's mercy, there's grace, because family. Look at what God says, what the psalmist says in Psalm 68. Father to the fatherless, defender of the widows, this is God, whose dwelling is holy. God places the lonely in families. He sets prisoners free and gives them joy, but he makes the rebellious shine. He makes the rebellious live in a sun-scorched land. So God says, listen, I want to place the lonely in families. This is why beyond just the nuclear family, things like blended families are beautiful. Just here's some perspective. For many people have this, culture has all these weird arguments. Would you marry a woman with a child? It's like, I'd never marry a woman with a child. Let's just think about the fact that Jesus was not Joseph's son. Just that image alone. Jesus was not Joseph's biological son, yet he took him in and fathered him, right? Just that image alone makes me realize that there's redemption in families, right? We don't need to be having these trivial arguments. If God calls us, maybe for some of us, God has called us to adopt a family and say, listen, you might not be my biological child, but I will love you as a father or as a mother does, right? He places the lonely in families. That is God's heart. And when it comes to beyond the nuclear family, church family, he places the lonely in families. You might not have your biological parents around, but in this place you will find family again. That was God's heart. In the book For the Love of Family, Dean and Jeanette Ivy, this is what they say. God intended for society to be established and sustained on the foundation of families. In the beginning, he started with the family. God created Adam and Eve and commanded them to have children and increase in number in Genesis 1:28. After God destroyed the earth with a flood, he started over with another family by saving Noah and his household on the ark in Genesis 6. A healthy family environment is the perfect training ground for life. Without it, people go into a world unprepared and ill-equipped for the things that come their way. Family is the place where we are equipped. Family is the place where we are prepared for life. Family gives us grounding. Family gives so much more than what we realize. This is why God takes this so seriously. God takes the role of family in society so seriously. God takes your role in your family, not just fathers and mothers. It's not like, when things go haywire, it was just mom and dad. I know we live in a culture where everything is like about therapy and it's like, unpack what your parents did to you. Oh, it was so rough. They made me make up my bed. It's like, no, all of us have a role to play. All of us can look at ourselves and say, okay, God, what do you require of me? Right? Parents aren't like this, the sole, it was their fault. No. We need to take responsibility for ourselves as well. And family is the place where we learn to do that. In 1954, we often think this only started now. 1954, that's many years ago. Some of you weren't even alive back then. An article by Wesley Gustafson. He wrote an article on the topic of family. And this is what he says. The Christian home is the most important institution in the world. That does not minimize the position of the church and state. They also have been ordained by God, but God places the home first in time as well as importance. It is the foundation upon which all other institutions are built. Upon it, the church and the state will either rise or fall. What the homes are, the churches and the schools are, and the government will be. Every place where there has been neglect of the home responsibility, there has eventually been a crumbling nation. And just pause on that for a second. Let's look at the state of our nation, and then let's speak about fatherlessness. Right? South Africa is one of the top-ranking countries in terms of fatherlessness. A high percentage of newly born babies has no father registered on their birth certificates. And so when you see from the beginning, from the get-go, if there is a crumbling in the home, there is ultimately a crumbling in society. Right? This is vitally important. Let's not neglect our role. I know especially I'm passionate about this, so when I speak to men, I'm not attacking you, I'm calling us to higher, but this is especially for dads, especially young men. When we look at women and we think, oh, she's so beautiful, like no man thinks like, oh man, she's going to be such a good woman, she's going to be such a good mother. We just think of what we can get in the moment, and we don't think about the implications beyond that, right? And when a child comes into the picture, not my problem, she'll deal with that. No, this is where we need to take our role seriously. Take a step up, and when we see this in our friendship groups, call them to higher. I know we say these things as jokes. No. We need to be the people that are different, right? I read these things. I read Dean Ivy's book, and I read this article because I want us to realize that more and more throughout society, less and less young people see the need for families. Right? More and more young people, or less and less young people, desire to have a family. More and more, we see young people desiring to be career-driven. Right? They want to build empires, they want to build careers, at the detriment of wanting to have families. In fact, when I have conversations with young people, and I'm just like, what is your plan? What do you foresee? Family is like number 3 or 4 on the list. It's careers, it's traveling, it's all of these things. And those aren't bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying those things are bad. But there should be something in us that say, hey, I want to further what God has given me. Right? And that is leaving a legacy beyond just my empire or my career. I want to further that. So I think it's so important. This is the mindset of our next generation. One of our values as a church is to be generational. Not just to raise up young people, but to think about the future generation of believers and what they inherit. What kind of faith will they inherit? Right? And so when I assess culture, here's what I see. A lot of young adults are settling for something called hookup culture, where that's the norm. But I don't want to have a family, I can have my needs met. And so hookup culture is becoming the norm. No longer do we want to commit. No longer do we want to say, you know what, I choose you. I'm going to annoy you for the rest of my life. Let me put this ring on your finger to prove to you that I will annoy you for the rest of my life. I'm just kidding, that's not... Right? Ambition and success. Right? People are driven by this at the expense of the need to commit to family. We see family as a deterrent from success, not as a catalyst towards success. Right? Family is going to hold me back from achieving my dreams, and so I'll get there later on. Less and less young people see the need to build a life together. I have nothing, you have nothing, let's bring our nothing and build something together. Rather, young people say, I first want to accumulate something, and then I'm going to start a family. Do you realize how much harder it is to bring your world and their world and blend the two? Ask anybody who's had to do that. It's like, I've already built my pattern. This is how I do life, finances, this is how long I sleep, and now suddenly you've come to disturb that whole thing. You stay there, I stay here, we'll just kind of mess around. Right? Less people want to build a life together. This is why I fully admire older couples. I need you to know, I honor you. People who started with nothing. Just young people, just go speak to an older couple. Just, how did you start? And you'll hear stories about, we had one couch. And that couch was also the dining room table, right? And sometimes that couch was the bed also. It's like we had just a cardboard box where the TV stood on and little 2 dining room chairs. And you're like, oh, that's so sweet. And you look at it, you're like, how did you get all of this? It's taken 30 years to build. And I'm like, there you go, I love those kinds of stories. And that's what life is made of. I think often we have warped perspectives of what it means to build a successful life. And so many people rather choose to just be individuals who live alongside other individuals, but not really a family, right? And so here's what culture has sold us. This is culture's options to you and I when it comes to building a life. This is all culture has given us what to choose from. Number one, we've got independence, right? I can just be an independent individual. I live life at my terms, in my own way. I've got complete freedom and autonomy. That's it. I don't have to answer to anybody. People think the fact that, all marriage is asking for permission to have fun. right? And so why would I want to have to ask? No. So I want to be independent, do life at my terms, and do that. In his book, The Meaning of Marriage, this is what Timothy Keller says. He says, marriage used to be a public institution for common good, and now it is a private arrangement for satisfaction of individuals. Marriage used to be about us, and now it's about me. Right? So that's culture's option number one. Be an individual for as long as you possibly can, and simply just have someone around just in case. Number two, culture has sold us cohabitation. Right? Okay, I don't want to be individualistic, so let me cohabitate. Let me just bring someone into my world. I want to hold on to both worlds. I first want to be independent, but I also want to have my needs met. And so the option is, let me not commit, but just come and live with me. I've got a place. You bring your hair dryer, your hair brushes, your toothbrush, and maybe 2 or 3 outfits. Leave them at my place, and that's it. We can still live our individual lives together, like as long as we both have, what do we call them? Friends with benefits is the cultural term, right? Again, Timothy Keller goes on, he says, cohabitation gives men regular access to the domestic and sexual ministries or ministrations of a girlfriend while allowing them to lead a more independent life and continue to look around for a better partner. So it's not saying like, I'm going to stay in this situation. It's just like, you good enough until someone better comes along. Isn't that really the heart beneath the lack of commitment, right? Number 3, culture offers us hookup culture. That's the third alternative, I get my sexual needs met from time to time, minus the commitment and the stress and the whatever else. I don't want to meet your parents. I don't want to go to your family bride at Christmas. I just want you to meet my needs and me to meet your needs, and we continue going about our lives. None of us have to get involved in each other's world. You go your way, I go mine. We are satisfied. When we need each other, we'll call each other and we continue going. And then finally, as a warped alternative for those who do want to finally commit, culture offers us the option of polygamy, right? So it's like, okay, I am married, but let's bring someone else into this mix. As if one person is not enough. Listen, for those of you that have had one wife or one husband, one is more than enough. Because they become different people at some point over the years. I married this man and this version of him and that version of him. He's a different man when he's hungry, right? He's a different man when he's stressed. He's a different man when he wakes up to when he goes. Listen, you marry one man, you marry 5. Ladies, we know. Gentlemen, we know this. Why would you want to bring another person into the mix? And so polygamy has become the more culturally acceptable option now. Just marry this one, and if things start to get boring, just bring another one into the mix, and it's fine. We just keep going. And so this is all culture has had to give us. These are the options before us. Commitment, not an option. Marriage, God's way, not an option. This is in 1962, apparently. So what do we do? What hope is there for future generations if these are the options that culture gives us? This is what weighs heavy on me. I've got 3 beautiful kids. I want to meet their spouses one day. I want to walk my daughters down the aisle. But if culture continues to go in the direction that it does, I fear that my kids get swept into this world. Therefore, we need to be able to say, no, something different has to be offered. Again, finally, the last section of what Tim and Kathy speak about, it says that the proponents of this new approach, these elements of culture, did not see the essence of marriage as located in either its divine sacramental symbolism or as a social bond given to benefit the broader human commonwealth. Rather, marriage is seen as a contract between 2 parties for mutual individual growth and satisfaction. That's what culture says. It's me and you, and we just kind of do this together, right? In this view, married persons married for themselves, not to fulfill responsibilities to God and society. Parties should therefore be allowed to conduct their marriages in any way they deem beneficial to them, and no obligation to church, tradition, or broader community should be imposed on them. In short, the Enlightenment period has privatized marriage, taking it out of the public sphere and redefined its purpose as individual gratification, not any broader good, such as the reflecting of God's nature, producing character, or raising children. Slowly but surely, this newer understanding of the meaning of marriage has displaced the older ones in Western culture. That's what we are left with. And so when I stand back and I assess the role of husbands and wives and children and teenagers and families, I look at this and I say, God, there has to be a different option. We can't be left with this. And so let me paint a picture for you. And I'll just give you two, and we will continue to speak about them in the weeks to come, of what the role of family is and what God's intended design is. Number one, God uses family to shape, teach, build, and equip us. Right? Outside of family, these things, yes, they happen, but they don't happen the way they should at the rate they could. Right? And so within family, God uses these people, these annoying people, these people that we often wish to get away from, these people that we sometimes wish to escape from. Don't say yes too loud. Your families are sitting here. God uses these people to shape us, teach us, build us, and equip us, sometimes against our will. Right? Often against your will. This is where the culture of individualism falls short, because self-improvement can only take you so far. Right? We can only get so much done by ourselves. We can only do so much. I can only do so much self-help, self-improvement. I can only read so much Dr. Phil and Oprah. I can only go to a therapist for so long before it comes to an end, because all of the stuff that I'm learning is outworked within a family context. Right? All of this that I'm trying to get done or trying to improve, family is the place where it comes into action. The Christian parenting journey, for those of you who are parents, trust me, it will purge away your selfishness. Right? I'm often surprised when young people are like, I don't want to have kids one day. I'm like, it is the most beautiful thing. But you know what you'll learn? You will learn to be selfless. Nothing teaches you selflessness, kind of like parenting. The Christian parenting journey will purge out selfishness and self-centeredness. Christian homes will help us become others-focused. Right? For those of you who grow up in homes where you're not just going to put your own plate on the dining room table. You're not just going to wash your own dish. Right? You can do it, but only for so long before someone's like, hey, there are other people in this house. Let's get to cleaning, You can't just look out for yourself. The Christian home will teach you to be others-focused. It will teach you to serve the needs of others. Christian marriages will cause you to exercise mutual submission. Not just you submit to me. I will at some point need to submit to you. I will at some point need to care for your needs, need to care for what you desire. See, this is the space where we learn to be others-focused, others-serving, others-centered. This is what families do for us. Again, the key verse for this series, Ephesians 5:21, and furthermore, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. What does mutual submission look like in a Christian home? I know for those of us who come from 19 whatever, that the idea of parents submitting to kids, what? No, parents don't submit to kids. But if we look at it in the biblical context, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you become your kids' friends and let them do what they want. It means that there's an element where we give them a certain voice within the home. So they can learn, give them responsibility, give them a voice, submit to that leadership, and let them prove themselves. They might just surprise you. Right? Within the Christian home, what happens? Within the Christian home, we are shaped. In other words, we are changed. Again, this is the contrary to culture. People say, look, I want to get married, but I just don't want to change. I'll get married, but don't change me. If that's what you want, then I'm sorry, marriage isn't for you, because in marriage, you will be changed, but you will be changed for the better. Yes. So if you want to become a better version of yourself, then I can highly recommend marriage. 5 stars. 2 thumbs up, says this guy. We become a better version of ourselves. The only place where we find people who are committed, as committed to us as God is within the home. Right? The only people who see who we can become and steer us toward that direction, the Christian home. Everywhere else, people see what they can get from us, and then that's it. The Christian home is where we see the version that God sees. I see what God has put in you, and I want to help you become that person. And if change is necessary to become that, then let's do that. That's the place where we are shaped. That's the place where we are taught. Being taught also requires humility. So that's the place where we learn humility and we learn submission. It's the place where we are built up and equipped to become, like I said, a better version of yourselves. We are constructively built up. We will hear things we don't want to hear. Our families will tell us our business. They will tell us the things that we don't want to say yes and amen to. Right? They will tell us the things where we want to walk out, slam the door, and not come back anymore. But guess what? That night, you come back, and you sit down, and you have your dinner, and you say those 3 words that nobody wants to say. You were right. The humility. Babe, I love you. You were right. Or those other, the 2 words that come before you were right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You gag every time you want to say it, right? So number 1, the home is the place where we are shaped, equipped, and built up. Number 2, within our families, we see and experience the gospel at work. No other place will we see and experience the gospel to the degree that we will within our homes, right? Think about it. What is displayed within the Christian home that aligns so perfectly to the message of the gospel? Within the Christian home, there is redemption, right? We experience redemption. We experience this idea like what God did. God redeemed us. God set aside everything that wasn't initially meant for us. And He said, you know what? I'm going to have you as mine. Even though you don't deserve to be mine, I will make you mine. Right? Within the Christian home, there is redemption. When there's disappointment, we set that aside and we say, you know what? I still choose you. Over and over. I choose you when you disappoint me. I choose you when you hurt me. I choose you when I don't get my way. I still choose you. Spouses and parents, especially parents. I choose you even when you directly disobey me. You are mine, unfortunately. We see and experience reconciliation. Isn't that the message of the gospel? Reconciliation. We are reconciled to one another again. When there's been hurt and disappointment, right? When all of these things have happened, there is reconciliation. We experience forgiveness. The message of the gospel, forgiveness, time and time again. We experience grace and mercy. And so within this thing called family, within this thing we sometimes don't understand, the things we sometimes look at and say, God, what were you thinking? Within this unit called family lies this one thing that points us more and more to the gospel. Every time it points us back to Jesus. It has to point us back to Jesus. So when we read, messages from the epistles where Paul and Peter and James point us back to Christian virtues like love each other, serve one another, forgive one another. The place where that starts is not just the church. The place where it starts is in the home. 1 Peter 3, and finally, all of you. This comes after he's spoken to husbands and wives and slaves and children and all of that. He says, finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted. Keep a humble attitude. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Have you ever had those moments in the home? You're going to say this, I'm going to one-up you. All that leads to is destruction, right? Don't retaliate with insults. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. I want to see that in action one day. Insult, bless you, brother. It sounds too sarcastic to be true, eh? Next time your wife says something, bless you. Disarmed. What? That is what God has called you to do. And He will grant you with His blessing. That is what God has called us to do. To live selflessly, to forgive time and time again, to reconcile, for there to be redemption within the home. That is what God has called us to do. And when we see what God has intended, when we move toward what God has intended, when we can see God's intended design and make that our desired goal, not only do we shame and shun culture for the alternatives they've offered us, we become the people. It should be you and I, the Christian families, who turn the tide on culture and move towards God intended ideal. We can slam the door in culture's alternatives and say, let's show you a different way. You've offered that, and that. None of them work for us. This is what works for us. And culture can learn from us rather than us learning from culture. We can set a whole new pathway, carve out a path. Even if your family was deeply rooted in this. Maybe you come from a family that was broken. I come from a family that's deeply rooted in alcoholism and divorce and all of that. And what we can do, we can choose, rather than choosing culture's alternatives and saying, well, I don't want that, so I'll settle for this, that, and that. We can choose to take our machete of biblical knowledge and carve out a whole new pathway. Say, it stops today, and my family goes this way. We've never seen this. We've never done this before. There's never been one family in my family that has stayed together for as long as we have. There's never been a child that's ended up healthy in my family, but we're going to raise something different. We're going to walk down a different path, and future generations will have us to thank because we've chosen a different pathway. Isn't that a beautiful thing to aim for? And so this morning, my prayer is that for all of us, regardless of your role in your family, this would become the intended goal. This would become the intended desire for us to work towards a healthier future for our families, whatever that looks like, whatever your role. May God give us the strength to do that. Amen.
We trust that this message was helpful to you.
We would love for you to stay in touch. So follow us on our Instagram at United Church SA or contact us on our WhatsApp number. Be blessed.